Today, let's explore the recent upheaval in Bangladesh, where a massive protest led by students erupted against the government's quota system. This system allocates an overwhelming 56% of public sector jobs to various groups, including a controversial 30% reserved for the descendants of freedom fighters. What started as peaceful demonstrations quickly escalated into violent clashes, resulting in a military curfew, internet shutdowns, and the tragic deaths of over 150 people, with thousands more injured. To fully grasp the roots of this unrest, we must delve into the history of Bangladesh. Before gaining independence, Bangladesh was known as East Pakistan, a region plagued by discrimination and exploitation by West Pakistan. Linguistic, economic, and political injustices were widespread, with the imposition of Urdu on the Bengali-speaking majority and an unequal distribution of resources. The catastrophic cyclone Bhola in 1970, which claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, further highlighted the neglect faced by East Pakistan. Amidst this backdrop of suffering, the seeds of revolution were sown. In the 1970 elections, the Awami League, led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, won a majority of seats in East Pakistan. However, the West Pakistani military refused to recognize these results, leading to a brutal crackdown on dissent. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was arrested, and widespread atrocities were committed, resulting in one of history's most harrowing genocides. Millions were displaced, and about 10 million people sought refuge in India. This humanitarian crisis catalyzed the Bangladesh Liberation War of 1971. With support from India led by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, Bangladesh emerged victorious, securing its independence. The freedom fighters who played a crucial role in this struggle became national heroes. In the aftermath, the government established a quota system to honor these fighters by reserving jobs for them and their descendants. Initially, the reservation was meant for the freedom fighters themselves, but over time it extended to their children and grandchildren. The current unrest stems from growing dissatisfaction with this quota system. While it was designed to reward those who fought for the country's independence, many believe it has outlived its purpose. Critics argue that the system is now being exploited, with allegations of corruption and favoritism. The ruling Awami League, in power for 15 years under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, is accused of manipulating the designation of freedom fighters to benefit its supporters. Protests against the system are not new. A significant movement emerged in 2012-13, demanding reforms. The discontent among the youth reached a tipping point in 2018, leading the government to remove quotas for first- and second-class jobs under intense pressure. However, the issue reignited in June 2024, when the High Court reinstated the quota system, following a petition by 7 students from freedom fighters' families. This decision catalyzed fresh protests across the country. Students argue that the quota system is unconstitutional and discriminatory. They contend that nowhere in the original constitution is there a provision for reserving jobs for the descendants of freedom fighters. Their argument is straightforward. While honoring freedom fighters is important, extending these benefits to grandchildren merely because of their lineage is unjust. In a nation grappling with high unemployment and economic challenges, merit should be the primary criterion for employment. The Supreme Court has temporarily stayed the High Court's order, but protests continue to gain momentum. Political parties, including the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, have joined forces with students, intensifying the pressure on the government. In response, the government has deployed over 7,000 paramilitary troops to control the unrest. The use of tear gas, rubber bullets, and sound grenades to disperse crowds has drawn international attention. The United Nations Secretary General has called for restraint, urging the government to refrain from using violence against protesters. Amidst this chaotic backdrop, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's response has been contentious. Her labeling of protesters as Razakars, a term for those who collaborated with the Pakistani army during the Liberation War, has sparked outrage. This tactic of branding dissenters as anti-national is seen as a strategy to discredit their demands. Critics argue that such rhetoric distracts from the real issues and undermines democratic principles. Democracy thrives on continuous political awareness, where citizens hold the government accountable and engage in meaningful discourse. Unfortunately, these protests have not garnered significant international media attention. In India, some media outlets have focused on local issues, diverting attention from the crisis in Bangladesh. This lack of coverage highlights a broader trend of underreporting significant events in neighboring countries, often overshadowed by domestic affairs. Bangladesh faces severe economic challenges that exacerbate the protesters' grievances. Unemployment rates are alarmingly high, with approximately 30 million people jobless in a country of 170 million. Each year, 1.8 to 1.9 million young people enter the job market, further straining the limited opportunities available. Inflation is rampant, and the country's foreign exchange reserves are dwindling. Despite claims of economic growth, these issues fuel widespread discontent and anti-government sentiment. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's government, in power for 4 consecutive terms, faces allegations of electoral rigging, adding to the public's frustration. Protesters have taken to the streets with slogans labeling her a dictator, accusing her of stifling dissent and suppressing free speech. In this charged atmosphere, a protester eloquently captured the spirit of the movement, calling for a Bangladesh without discrimination. In the coming months, the government's response to these protests will be crucial. While it has formed a judicial probe committee to investigate incidents of violence, the protesters remain skeptical of its intentions. They demand meaningful reforms and transparency in the quota system, emphasizing the need for a merit-based approach to public sector jobs. To address these challenges, the government must focus on creating jobs and revitalizing the economy. Economic policies should prioritize sustainable growth and development, ensuring opportunities for all citizens. The protests against the quota system are a symptom of a deeper disease, unemployment and economic stagnation. Addressing these root causes is essential for long-term stability. Moreover, questions have been raised about the government's handling of the protests. Allegations of violence and the use of excessive force against demonstrators highlight the need for accountability and respect for human rights. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina must recognize the legitimate concerns of her people and engage in constructive dialogue to find common ground. While the protests in Bangladesh have brought to light issues of discrimination and corruption, they also serve as a reminder of the enduring spirit of its people. The students and citizens demanding change exemplify the courage and resilience that defined the nation's struggle for independence. Their voices, amplified through protests, call for a more just and equitable society. The international community must pay attention to the unfolding events in Bangladesh, offering support and solidarity. A democratic society thrives on active citizen engagement and the protection of civil liberties. As Bangladesh navigates this critical juncture, it is essential for all stakeholders, domestic and international, to champion democratic principles and work towards a peaceful resolution. The Explorer signing off.